Welcome into WBOA Courtside. Excited to have you along the way, joined by a veteran official this week on the podcast, talking the no call under pressure. How do you do it? And sometimes it is a tough call. Bobbie Reinhart, our guest this week on the podcast, 16 years as a licensed WIA official. Grew up in the La Crosse area, now based in Madison, and has been to state tournament a couple of times already here in his young career as a basketball official. And Bobbie, I guess take us back to the beginning. Where did it all start? Did you play the game in high school and then get the bug for officiating? I know you've got coaching in your family in the game of basketball. How did it all begin?
I played basketball in high school, knew that wasn't going to take me anywhere beyond high school, if I'm being honest. Right away knew that wasn't the path. So found out pretty early on that I was passionate for working with kids, youth. When we would do basketball camps, when we were playing high school basketball, we would host camps. I always enjoyed being one of the officials on the court. A lot of the guys shied away from that because once you put a whistle in your mouth, you don't know what you're doing. But that kind of came natural for me from a young age in high school. And so that's something that I jumped into, officiated some scrimmages at the lower levels, and then really jumped in when I took a course at our high school. I was lucky enough to have an officiating sports course. It was probably one of the earlier ones in the state when I was in high school, but had a great mentor when I was in high school in that course. He did a really good job of not only like taking us through understanding what the rules are and applying those rules, but made it experiential for us. And so we were officiating our peers in that class, which, as you guys know, can be one of the most challenging things, right? Is when you're officiating people you know pretty well, you got to be pretty confident with what you're doing. So looking back on that, that was a way to get excited about the game in a different way for me. And then that shifted my mindset in thinking about how I take what I learned as a player into applying that as an official and really developing that connection to the game in a different way. So thinking about going from being a player, running plays, things like that, but then and thinking about from a officiating standpoint, like knowing what I know about the game of basketball, coming from a family of coaches, like you mentioned, being able to think about it in a different perspective. Like, what are coaches looking for? What are players looking for in a game? How do you get to a point where you can help them get into a flow, which makes our jobs as officials a lot easier?
When you think about your own growth as an official, where did improving play calling actually come from? Deeper rules knowledge, better judgment, or learning when not to intervene? And how did that balance evolve?
I took pride in having like a quick whistle, right? You see it, you call it. That was my mentality when I was working youth basketball, some middle school games, even early high school games when I was working at the freshman level. I wanted to prove that I knew what I was doing, right? When I was young, I was working with older guys, officiating for coaches that were older and had been in the game for a while. You wanted to prove yourself. And I learned pretty quickly as I joined an association and got to know some veteran officials that proving yourself as an official is much more than just being able to blow the whistle in a quick fashion when you see what you think is a foul or a violation. So as I joined the association, we really started to have conversation about what good officials do and how they apply the rules. That's when I started to work some varsity games when I got with Cruz. And that's when the game exposed a different mindset that I needed to have. The game sped up. The players had better body control in certain regards, and they could take more contact than what I was typically used to, right? And with that comes a natural need to have to adjust the way that I called the game and learn that there's going to be contact. Basketball is a contact sport, just like a lot of other sports. We have to be able to distinguish what contact constitutes a whistle and which contact doesn't. And that's when I realized that improvement wasn't just about knowing the rules. It was really about understanding the impact of the rules. And although like we experienced that when we used to play basketball and we can see that in my experience coaching, but when you get on the floor as an official, that perspective goes away because you're thinking so quickly on your feet, having to adjudicate those calls. But really you have to slow yourself down and get back to that mindset, right? What really is having an impact? How do we determine what needs to have a whistle and what doesn't? One way that I'm able to think about that now after having years of experience and getting those reps that are necessary to get to that point is like letting the game breathe, figuring out how to find the flow in the game. There's nothing better in a game when you can go several minutes without a whistle and the ball's going in the hoop, you're in transition, you're up and down, and you get a good flow in the game. That's how I approach the game now is like, what do I need to do to help the players and the coaches get into a flow? Some games that's easier than others, right? Some games you have to get out there and you have to blow the whistle because players aren't realizing that the contact they are engaging in is illegal and it's having an impact. on the game, but hopefully you can help them understand that and change their mindset as well. So you can get in that flow. So yeah, really shifting from contact needing a whistle to how is that contact impacting the play? I mean, does it need a whistle, or can we let that play on and see how it impacts the play as you see the whole play develop?
Trusting the no call under pressure, our theme this week. Bobbie Reinhart, our guest, 16 years as a basketball official. And at the very high level, high school and small college level, there's people who know the rules. And then there's officials who know the rules and actually apply the rules. What do you think separates those two officials?
At the higher high school levels and the college levels, knowing the rules isn't really a separator, right? It's expected if you're stepping on the floor that you know the rules and you know how to apply those rules. The difference really does show up in how we are choosing to apply those rules in certain situations. And I think of two areas. One that comes to mind is anticipation. And then the second one is like crew continuity. So along the lines of anticipation, that can be one of the biggest traps in the game. We can get ourselves in a trap when you're in transition and you see a defender that you think might be illegal at the moment, and you make a decision in your mind, yep, I'm going to make that call the moment there's contact, right? So it goes back to my previous answer in the conversation, making sure that you're getting to a point where anticipation is removed from your game, right? Really being able to see the full play through and giving yourself the grace to be able to do that. With that comes the need to be willing to have a late whistle once in a while, right? As officials, we oftentimes feel like we have to get the call right and get it right in that moment and be right on top of it. And now when I'm in the stands watching a game and I hear someone say, wow, that was a really late call, like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's a great thing, right? That means they saw the entire play through. The official determined that it was illegal contact, and it obviously had an impact on the play. And we might be shooting 2 free throws because of it. But maybe had that ball gone in and the impact on the play wasn't as significant, maybe we're playing on and we're going back the other way. And so just shifting that mindset. And then the other separator, consistency within the crew. So at those levels, oftentimes high school, we're still lucky where most nights you're working with guys that you're pretty familiar with, right? Not always the same guys, but when you're getting into sectionals and going to the state tournament, you're going to be on mixed crews, and same thing at the college level, right? And so you have to find a way to be able to blend in with the guys that you're working with. And that's something that I've really prided myself on, is really trying to figure out who are the guys I'm working with, what are they going to use as their tendencies, and what are they going to fall back on as their go-to things that they're looking for, and then be able to adjust my game accordingly. And that's easier said than done sometimes, right? We all have our own styles, but by having good pre-games, thinking about what we're going to be looking for, the things that we want to be focused on for the game ahead of us, we can proactively communicate and make sure that we're aligned so that when we're out there, again, we're getting to a point where we're looking for the same thing that the other person is looking for and trying to get into that same game flow. So we don't have one of the three officials calling some of that minor contact out top and the other two letting that go. And then coaches are working yourselves against each other. So yeah, getting to a point where you're not anticipating calls and you're being consistent with the crew is two ways you can separate yourself.
You often hear of the rulebook versus the casebook. How has consistent use of the casebook shaped your feel for real-world situations compared to relying on rule language alone?
Obviously, the rules book gives us our structure. It's the thing that we abide by. We have to know the rules to be able to apply the rules, and it gives us the right language in which to do so. And we need that foundation. That's really important. But the case book is where you can see the rules come to life, right? I put using the case book in the same bucket as watching film and thinking about how, yeah, we have the rules in front of us, but how are we applying those rules like we've discussed? I'm an educator. I've been in education for my entire career, and I think of it like teaching math, right? You can give kids the formulas, you can teach them step by step how to do things, but once that test gets in front of them or they have to do a problem where they have to decipher what step they have to apply or what formula they have to apply, it's the same thing as officiating, right? Constantly we're making decisions on what part of the rule book we use at certain moments, and that's where the case book can come into play. Thinking about building that pattern recognition and not being surprised during live play because we've seen versions of different scenarios before. And so when you can really get into the case book and think through different scenarios and vision what might come and put yourself in those situations, that's where you build confidence. Confidence allows you to prepare in a different way. And that's where the case book and putting your nose in the case book makes a difference, right? It's the same as watching film. It's applying those situations and using the rules book to defend those situations.
Bobbie Reinhart, our guest this week on WBOA Courtside, official from the Madison area. I had the pleasure of working a boys sectional with him 2 seasons ago. First time we met. I must have not screwed it up too bad. You agreed to come on the podcast this week, so thank you for doing that. Speaking of the casebook, can you share an example of where the casebook gave you some clarity or maybe some confidence to not blow your whistle on a play because it looked questionable, but it really wasn't an infraction? Any examples that you can share on that?
The two most common things that I come to mind with that question, one is verticality at the rim. A lot of times when you're watching a game or you're in the stands, there's any contact on a shot when a player's strictly vertical or not, everybody's looking for a foul, right? And they assume because there was contact when somebody was shooting, it must have been illegal when we should be shooting free throws. And if we don't have a whistle on that, a lot of people are confused, right? You think about being able to apply the rules and think about the case book and look at verticality. Early on in my career, that was one that I struggled with, right? Again, you think contact, you think foul, you think you're shooting free throws. But you really have to go to the heart of the rule and then apply the case book and the knowledge from the case book where you think about if we have a legal defender who isn't causing illegal contact, he's entitled to that space as well. And as long as he's not displacing the offensive player, we have a no call and we're gonna continue to play on. And that's again where you have to build confidence with that because when you don't have enough reps and you're not getting the experience you need in those situations, the tendency is you see contact, you blow your whistle. And so utilizing the casebook, getting into the casebook and really being comfortable with that allows you to be able to pass on some of those plays where the majority of the people in the gym feel like we should have a whistle and there should be contact. The other is when the offense is initiating contact on a drive to the rim, right? Again, similar play, but a lot of times our offensive players are being pretty crafty and they're doing it in a way that looks like the contact is pretty significant, right? You have a guy driving the lane, he's leaning into his defender, he goes up and throws up a shot and then ends up falling to the floor and going into the mats underneath the hoop, right? Again, that's where a ton of people think we should have a foul. But rules knowledge and looking at the case book, it's one of those plays where the offense is initiating that contact. We're not going to reward that behavior in a game, and we're gonna play on. And again, you have to be confident enough to be able to apply the rules that you know and use what you know in the case book to be able to pass on things that either coaches, players, or fans might be upset about.
There's a lot in the rule book and a lot taught in terms of probably science on when we should blow the whistle. There's not as much taught on the art of when we should stay disciplined and have that courage not to blow the whistle. So that's the theme of the episode and why we brought you on. What does that discipline actually look like on the floor, possession by possession, or what does your mindset look like where you can have that courage and be okay internally, not always blowing your whistle?
One thing the crews that I work with talk about a lot before a game is ensuring that we're seeing the entire play through. Again, I go back to what I said before about letting a play breathe, just giving it time and space to develop, seeing the play from start to finish and even a tick longer can go a long way. So something that I'm just kind of repeating to myself over and over throughout a game is just like see it through, let it finish. It's those constant internal reminders and dialogue where we have to remind ourselves and talk to ourselves and be in a position where we don't rush ourselves and get caught up in the heat of a moment. If it's a close game and there's going to be contact, we have to still be able to rely on our experiences and trust ourselves to see it play through. So thinking about what that means possession by possession to have discipline, it's making sure that you're in the right position, staying patient with the whistle, and just making sure that you've completely processed what's happened throughout the play. But the harder part is the emotional discipline that has to come with that, right? Again, you don't want to you don't want to live too much in the moment when you're officiating because you can get wrapped up in what the coaches are saying, what the players are looking for, what the fans are arguing for. But you got to be disciplined and you have to manage your emotions and continue that self-talk and live to make sure that you're seeing a full play develop before you make a decision. When I think about discipline, that's neutrality, right? Not giving away what I'm thinking, what I might be feeling in a moment, and not reacting to that emotion and trusting again that I know when I need to have a whistle and when I can pass on something. That comes with experience. It comes with watching film, looking at the case book, understanding what the rules are, and thinking about everything that comes with it. Just letting plays breathe and seeing them from start to finish is crucial. And that's what I rely on possession by possession to stay disciplined in that.
And it doesn't happen overnight, right, Bobbie? I mean, your first year versus your 10th year, I'm sure you're seeing plays differently, and that's for a lot of officials. How do you train yourself, though, to have that patient whistle, to let the play breathe when the crowd is on you all night or the coach is yelling at you, a loud environment, a sectional final, a state tournament game? How do you train yourself to be patient and let the play breathe?
The one thing that's been most beneficial is film study. Although I don't like watching myself on camera, it's one of those necessary evils, right? Again, it was the same with me in the classroom. Like I hated filming my own lessons, but again, you learn when you watch yourself. There are some clips that I probably still have saved on my phone or somewhere where early on in my career, I was like, what were you thinking, right? Why did you have a whistle on that? Or why was the whistle so early? Or what was that mechanic that you fumbled at the table, right? Things like that. But with that comes the ability to continue to get more reps, right? It's those mental reps. It's the seeing how you interacted during a play. And like sometimes when you're watching film, it's obvious. Like I didn't see that play through. I made an assumption and made a call that ended up not developing. That was something I had to talk my way out of with the coach and explain, hey, I might have missed that one because, I didn't see the play through. Thinking about that has allowed me to become more patient. You realize when you watch film, there might be a play where you thought you had a really late whistle and the whistle really wasn't that late. Things are always sped up on the floor, reminding yourself of that as well. As you train and watch film and take a look at yourself doing those things, like things aren't as fast as they seem. So you can give everything an extra tick. No one's really going to notice except for you and maybe the crew that you're on the floor with. I also think about in the off season, making sure that I'm taking camp seriously and making sure that the off season doesn't just mean I'm away from the game, right? It's important to take that physical break and the mental break, but also fine tuning your craft, staying in connection with people from the association and going to camps, not only to better myself, but I've also found value in being a clinician and helping younger guys develop. One of the ways that we can develop the best ourselves is by teaching others, right? And mentoring others and having those conversations where I'm now able to share information that veteran officials shared with me when I was coming up. So being able to do that has helped a ton as well. One thing I love to do here at school when I'm working, we have an officiating sports class now in its first year, and just going to talk to the kids who are putting the stripes on for the first time and standing in the half circle practicing blowing the whistle, right? That's really where the excitement and the passion comes back in. And so just being able to engage with them and hopefully being able to, take them to tournaments and get them excited about the game is really where the best part of the training comes in.
It's amazing you say that. We started doing some entry level stuff in our association as well. And believe it or not, one of the most important things that we try and instill in our new officials is how you blow the whistle matters. If we can get you at a high standard at that, you have a pretty good chance of success, and we can figure out the rest as it goes and can live with a lot beyond that. What common over officiating habits, Bobbie, do you see from officials who might technically be correct, though they're missing the bigger picture of the game?
I always struggle with a comment like we have to set the tone early. It's like, what does that mean, right? Setting the tone early can look so different in the different games that we officiate, right? I get where it comes from, right? Setting the tone early, if we know that we're going to have two really physical teams and they're going to be hands-on and they're going to, try to get away with things that we don't call. I get that. But having a pregame that's predicated on setting the tone early to me is something that can get in the way, right? I talked about getting in the flow of the game and letting the game breathe. That applies in that situation as well, right? We can scout, we can watch film on a team or understand who their scores are and things like that. We do teams a disservice when we go into the game thinking we know exactly what's going to go on before we give it a chance to develop. Although I understand where that comment comes from, I always enter into that conversation and ask the crews to be open-minded as we walk on the floor, right? And not assume that we know what's going to happen before the game develops. As technology develops and we continue to have different angles of film and still shots and you name it, like you're going to have it from a game, right? You can't really hide from the calls you make. We don't officiate in slow motion though, right? We still have to trust ourselves. We still have to be able to pass on certain calls, even though there might be marginal contact, right? What I love the most is like sometimes someone from the crew will be super hard on themselves and send a still shot of one play where there is contact, but it's like without the video beforehand and the video after, what are we looking at? Being able to give yourself grace as an official, right? You're going to be scrutinized night in and night out. Like we know that going on the floor, but being able to maintain that confidence, even though what we call and what we don't call can be dissected in so many different ways because of the film that's available now. I'm just trusting yourself and being able to trust the people you're working with so that you're not overanalyzing it and you're still having fun while you're doing it.
You mentioned there's coaching in your family. Your brother's a successful varsity boys head coach. How often is he reaching out to you during the season and showing you clips of plays and asking for advice or talking him off the ledge?
Yeah. So if anybody knows my brother, if they officiated my brother, they know probably 6-7 years ago, he was a guy who can get on officials. And so as I got started and got more serious about it and worked more varsity games, we often had conversations about plays, and I'd bring him back down to earth a little bit and try to help him understand the perspective of an official. And he's gotten a lot better because of it. And I've gotten better as well, hearing his perspective on where his mindset's at and what they're seeing. Yeah, it's fun to send clips back and forth. I always go up and work the Midwest Players Classic, and we sit and chat for a day and watch games together and share perspectives. So it's unique to have that in the family and be able to see both sides of it and learn from each other.
We really appreciate the time joining us this week on the podcast as we wrap up another season of high school basketball here in the state of Wisconsin. Time for you to share your advice. How can they elevate their craft and get better and continue to be open to feedback as they want to build that career and get to state like you've been a couple of times already?
I talked before about the officiating sports class that we have here, and I'll go back to that. I spoke with them recently. It was a first semester class, and we're getting our second semester class up and running here right now. I focus on 3 things with them. Obviously, you got to know the rules, right? They're there for a reason, and you have to know the rules to be able to apply the rules and feel confident with them. You have to get reps, right? It might be uncomfortable right now to get reps with your high school level peers. Go work youth games, work your way up and work some high school games eventually. And most importantly, as you get started, find a really good mentor. Get connected to an association. Find somebody you're comfortable communicating with, that you don't feel that you get defensive with when you start to judge yourself. Have that open dialogue and be willing to take criticism and take feedback so that you can continue to get better. That applies to anybody really getting started or getting back into it. And it probably applies for all of us, right? Sticking with those mentors. We all have our mentors that we still work with, the people that we trust the most. When, you have a challenging game, you pick up the phone and you talk through it. That's one of the biggest reasons I do this is the relationships I have with the guys that I work with, knowing that I can trust them with not only officiating, but things beyond that. So get to know the people you're working with and stay connected and have fun while you do it.
Bobbie Reinhart, our guest this week on WBOA Courtside, official from the Madison area. Great advice on pressure situations and how you can deal with those on the court and prepare yourself off the court during the season and during the off season. That'll do it for us this week. For Justin Marion, our executive producer, Josh Mansky, I'm Lance Lusenegger. Thanks for tuning in to WBOA Courtside. If you want to learn more about the Wisconsin Basketball Officials Association, go to our website, wisboa.net. Learn more. If you want to get into officiating, never too late. We'd love to have you join us. Learn more at the website there and reach out to us, and we'll get you set up for next season, as there's always a need, no doubt about it. From youth levels all the way up to the high school levels, plenty of games here in southeastern Wisconsin. And if you're not from Wisconsin or you live in the other part of the state, reach out to us. We can help you get connected with people who are in the officiating world in your part of the area. Thanks so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll look forward to talking some basketball with you again next week here on WBOA Courtside.